Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee's online worship service. I'm Reverend Dina McFeeters, and I am honored to serve as Associate Minister. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all that you are carrying with you today and all that your heart longs to set down. We'd like to pay a special welcome to guests joining us today. If you are visiting for the first time or joining us from afar, why don't you say hello in the chat and tell us where you're joining us from? I'm delighted to introduce our pulpit guest this morning, the Reverend Patrice Curtis. Reverend Curtis is the Transformational Interim Ministries Director on the UUA Ministry and Faith Development Team. Patrice collaborates with and supports interim ministers and religious professionals in amplifying and practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion within congregations, and to disrupt unhealthy cultural patterns that make beloved community difficult to realize. Patrice has served congregations in Clearwater, Florida, Washington, D.C., and Church of the Larger Fellowship, and interned at First Unitarian Church of Portland, Oregon. Patrice, it's great to have you in our virtual pulpit. Welcome. I welcome everyone to our worship service by inviting you to repeat our mission after me. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action.
Our opening reading is Creatures and Creators by Richard Gilbert, adapted. When we are silent, we feel creation within us, pulsing in our veins, beating in our hearts, dancing in our minds. We live in a world not of our making, a world we barely understand in our best moments, a world which sustains us, we know not why. We walk humbly before such immensity, awestruck at its wild beauty and delicate charm. We know we cannot create such a world, yet somehow we are creators too. In our wisest moments, we know not if creation has purpose, if it has direction, if there is some ultimate meaning to it all. All we know is that we, creatures in the vastness of time and space, can find a home in this intricate web of existence, can forge our own meanings from the unknown, can make a life out of this creative force we dare not name.
I'm Reverend Kimberly, your Minister of Religious Education. And the story I have for you today is by a dear friend of mine named Matt Meyer, and it's called Desmond Gets Free. The illustrations are by Kim Pham. Desmond the mouse lived in the most beautiful meadow in all of the land. Every morning, Desmond would wake with the sunrise and would spend the day playing in the meadow. And every evening, Desmond would go to sleep in the middle of that meadow under the beautiful starry sky. One night, though, Desmond awoke when it was still dark out. He tried to roll over to a more comfortable spot, but something wasn't right. Desmond realized that his tail was stuck right to the ground and beginning to throb with pain. He felt behind him, and there was a huge boulder that seemed to have fallen in the middle of the meadow, just on his tail. Desmond pushed on the boulder and tugged on his tail, and he pushed on the boulder and tugged on his tail, and he pushed and he tugged and he pushed and he tugged, but it was no use. When he was out of breath and had just about given up, he saw a giraffe nearby in the grass. Good news, he thought. Oh, giraffe, Desmond cried, could you please push that boulder a few inches in the other direction so that I could go free? The giraffe looked at Desmond and laughed the way giraffes do. Silly mouse, said the giraffe, that's no boulder. That's an elephant that's fallen asleep in the middle of the meadow just on your tail. Well, if you could just wake up the elephant and ask him to roll over a few inches in the other direction, I could go free. Well, replied the giraffe, you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best to not get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like these. Desmond quietly replied, well, I do not appreciate your neutrality. The giraffe wandered off, and Desmond tried calling out to the elephant to wake him up. But those giant ears were just too far on the other side of the giant elephant body. So again, Desmond pushed on the elephant and tugged on his tail, and he pushed and he tugged and he pushed and he tugged, but it was no use. When he was out of breath and had just about given up again, a gazelle wandered by. Oh, gazelle, he cried, oh, gazelle, it seems that an elephant has fallen asleep on my tail in the middle of this meadow. I'm stuck and it hurts. I wonder if you might gently wake him and ask him to roll over just a few inches so that I might go free. Well, said the gazelle, I see your problem there, but you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's better not to get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like these. Desmond replied, almost really just to himself, I do not appreciate your neutrality. Desmond tried again to call to the elephant. He tried to push the giant animal away. He tried again to tug his tail free, but it was no use. When he was out of breath and had just about given up for the last time, he saw another mouse wandering through the meadow. My name is Nelson. Nelson, this giant elephant has fallen asleep on my tail in the middle of the meadow. I wonder if you might run over and call and tug on his giant ears and ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction so that I could go free, Desmond asked. Of course, said Nelson. So Nelson ran all the way to the other end of the giant elephant body, and he called and he tugged on those giant elephant ears at the top of the elephant head. But the elephant wouldn't budge. The elephant heard Nelson's small voice far away, but he felt too comfortable to move. Nelson ran back to Desmond, a little out of breath, and he said, I have an idea. Don't move. And he ran off. I won't, muttered Desmond. A little while later, Nelson emerged through the tall grass, and he wasn't alone. Nelson had found 3 other mouse friends to help him, and each one of them had also brought 3 of their friends. And the whole group of them ran over to the giant elephant head of the giant elephant, and one mouse scrambled up the shoulders of another, and another scrambled up her shoulders, and then one after another, they climbed up until the whole group of them had formed a long mouse ladder right up to the side of the elephant. At last, Nelson climbed up the shoulders of his mouse friends, one on top of another, until he was way up on that giant elephant, standing next to the giant elephant ear. Excuse me, he called out right into that ear. It seems you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of this meadow. I wonder if you could just roll over a few inches the other direction so he could go free. And the giant elephant made a low groan. Grumph. I'm comfortable just where I am. Go away. So Nelson asked more of his mouse friends to climb up. One by one, they helped each other up the side of the elephant. One by one, they called out into the giant elephant ear on top of the giant elephant head. And again, the giant elephant made a low, giant groan. Grumph! I'm comfortable just where I am. Go away. Then Nelson had an idea. He whispered to the mice, and then they all yelled and tugged together. Excuse me, it seems you've fallen asleep on our friend's tail in the middle of the meadow. Roll over just a few inches in the other direction, and he can go free. This time, all the tugging and voices together on the elephant's ear were too strong to ignore. I was comfortable where I was, but if I move over, if you agree to just stop bothering me, making such a racket, the elephant cried out. And then the elephant rolled over just a few inches in the other direction. Nelson and the other mice helped each other climb back down, and Desmond was finally free. Desmond and Nelson and all their mouse friends spent the rest of the day, of that beautiful day, playing in the middle of that beautiful meadow. The end. This book was inspired by the words of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who said this: "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality."
I invite you to join me now in a time of contemplation, which will be followed by silence, followed by the song Spirit of Life. So take a moment now to do whatever you need to do to get comfortable in your body. Maybe that means taking a deep breath in and releasing it. Maybe it means feeling your feet or your sit bones pressing into the stable ground beneath you. Or maybe it means feeling the very top of your head connect you up into the air and all that is. Maybe it means feeling the edges of your skin and where they interact with the air beyond. Whatever it means, do it now. Come into being here and now. Spirit of life and love, Holy One of our being and our becoming, that which is sacred within, among, and beyond us. Come sit with us. Make your presence known in and among us. Help us feel the holy in this mess of a world. It's been a hard week here in Wisconsin, and many of us are gathered today with heavy hearts, many of us with broken hearts. Come close, holiness. Lean in for comfort and repair. Help us remember the larger love holding us, holding all we love, holding all that is. And don't just nestle close to us, holiness. Send your memories of love to those suffering all around us today. Start with the victims of the violence in Waukesha and Kenosha. Wrap your love around them like a blanket. Hold their families close. Wrap your love around their communities, our communities, around the frightened children, the heartsick adults. Wrap your love in and through all the cracks of pain and hold us. Hold us. Hold us all. Comfort us with layers and layers of love. We will keep on with the holy work of love and justice, emboldened by our comfort and connection. We will keep on with the holy work of moving equity and love through our systems. But in this moment, right now, may we rest and be held. May we know that violence is never the last word. Injustice is not the end of the story. Cruelty and awfulness is not where the story ends, because we are part of this story. And with our hearts and hands and love and our holiness, we will make the world new again. We are part of the larger love. We can bring love's justice, love's comfort. And for this moment, we can just rest in it. May it be so. And amen.
Good morning. My name is Paul Kozadowski, and I'm pleased to be your worship associate. This reading is adapted from two poems by Jalal al-Din Rumi. We study artifacts and think we know the maker, so proud of having figured the derivation. Like a scientist, we collect data and put facts together to come to some conclusion. Mystics arrive at knowing differently, lay a head upon a person's chest, and drift into the answer. Thinking gives off smoke to prove the existence of fire. A mystic sits inside the burning. You have had certain visions. Before them, did not mysticism sound ridiculous? There are wonderful shapes in rising smoke that imagination loves to watch. But it's a mistake to leave the fire for that filmy sight. Stay at the flame's core. What you've been given has released you from prison. When Reverend Patrice asked me to reflect on this reading, I confess I was perplexed at first. This didn't seem like a Thanksgiving poem. But as I sat with it, I discovered that the images cut to the core of my experience of grief, and how even grief can be a cause for thankfulness. My youngest sister died of cancer 17 years ago. She lived in Baltimore, so her 3-year struggle and eventual death happened mostly at a distance. We were not close, and even her fatal illness didn't change that. My family, for the most part, responded to her illness with practical help, but suppressed emotions. And I did the same, visiting occasionally and fancying myself as a calming force, conveying strength and wisdom and acceptance. In a way, I was the detached scientist Rumi envisions, observing the rising smoke, that filmy sight. A year ago, death came to another family member when my brother-in-law contracted COVID. He was put on a ventilator in a matter of weeks, and I watched Kathy and her Buffalo, New York family ride the roller coaster of hope and dread over phone calls and FaceTime. In those early weeks, I tried to be stoic and strong, as I did during my sister's illness. But as the prognosis grew more dire, I felt the cool armor of intellect wear away. Surrounded by the pure and unfettered grief of Kathy and the rest of her brother's family, I felt my own grief emerge from deep within. In Rumi's striking terms, I stopped analyzing the smoke and stepped closer to the flame's core. It seems odd to relate this story on a Thanksgiving weekend. I'm not thankful for the suffering, the continuing pain, the absence in the world left by Al's passing. Like those who knew him, I will not forget Al, but I will also not forget the powerful and visceral lesson that emerged from his passing as I watched people I loved embrace and honor their grief, staying close to the flame's core. For that experience and the lessons that will stay with me, I am truly thankful.
In a conversation I had a few weeks ago, the usage of they as a singular pronoun arose. Now I know it's been around a while now, but using they as a singular pronoun still sounds strange to me, though much less so as time has gone on. I remember my initial resistance, not to the idea of being freed from she and he pronouns, but because the grammar I have used my entire life, learned as a child, both conversationally and in English classes right up through college, was being upended. I did finally take the time to Google the usage of they and found several resources addressing the supposedly new use. What I discovered, of course, is that the singular use of they got lost some time ago. It became an artifact of the English language, at least in the United States. An article published in the New York Times by James McWhorter in late September show we are still struggling with this new use. His opinion was entitled, "Gender Pronouns Are Changing, It's Exhilarating." McWhorter argues that we are in a glorious time because we have the opportunity to witness this major change in our language. He reminds us that we have survived many changes in our language, such as the adoption of Ms., which ended delineating women as married or unmarried on the basis of Mrs. and Miss. He continues, language change is a spectator sport. It isn't whether, but how things will change over time. And getting to witness a major change like what's happening today is a kind of privilege, a top ticket. We sometimes laugh at ourselves as Unitarian Universalists when we say, we are a people of the word. Perhaps you are struggling with they, the singular they, as well. We sometimes use this as coded language. We are a people of the word for celebrating the intellect. We like facts and data, as Rumi put it in our reading. But I think that Rumi challenges us to not get stuck. Jalaluddin Rumi was a 13th century Persian Sufi saint, jurist, theologian, and poet. We know him through our hymn, "Come, Come, Whoever You Are," adapted from his poem. Rumi studied Islamic law and was the head of a school that taught theology, music, poetry, and other subjects and practices related to the growth of the soul. As the translator Coleman Barks writes in the book, Soul of Rumi. Rumi was both a mystic and a practical worker in the world. Rumi did not say abandon rational thought. After all, he lived in the world of keeping a school afloat, of helping students who needed scholarships, who ran into debt problems, who needed jobs, who needed married love advice. He tended to the body, mind, and spirit of his students. Barks continues, I feel the source of the power of Rumi's poetic derives from his continual balance of surrender and discipline, his visionary radiance held in the level calm of ordinary sight. Splendor and practice, meditation and chore. Somewhere in the dynamic of those lies the vitality and validity. Rumi's dense body of work illustrates a man who lived in balance with his intellect and his spirituality. He aptly demonstrates for us that if we allow rationality, an intellectual, practical mind to take root above all else, we will put at risk a rich, interior, spiritual life. What can keep us from being out of balance between the demands of life, the need for our practical mind, and a continuous welcoming of and openness to spiritual mystery? Have you ever driven by or walked past a corner many, many times, maybe one in your neighborhood, perhaps walking your four-legged friend, or perhaps it's part of your commute if you're commuting to work, or perhaps it's driving your kids to school, perhaps it's going to the grocery store, but you pass this corner or perhaps this block all the time. Then one day, you notice something you've never noticed before. A new color on the side of a building, a peculiar hum in the air, a sweet smell, a bush in full glorious bloom. It might be the inattention that comes when we think we know what we know. We stop attending to what is around us. Perhaps from avoiding what we think we don't know because not knowing is scary. Or perhaps it is because we think we know what is already there. Inattention is an obstacle that blocks us from the full wonder of the world, the full wonder of the sun and the moon and the stars, the sweet smell of newly blooming flowers. That color on that building might have been there for 2 weeks before we notice it. An attachment to facts and data is kind of like this. It will make it harder to notice when those facts no longer express what might be a new reality or what might have been a reality already there that we didn't see. If you know that is how you would express to yourself, if you know your spouse likes sugar cookies, when they tell you one day that they prefer apple pie, holding on to that fact of that sugar cookie will not serve you. Author C.S. Lewis wrote this passage. The thrill you feel on first seeing some delightful place dies away when you really go to live there. Does this mean it would be better not to live in this beautiful place? By no means. If you go through with it, the dying away of the first thrill will be compensated for by a quieter and more lasting kind of interest. What is more, it is just the people who are ready to submit to the loss of the thrill and settle down to the sober interest who are then most likely to meet new thrills in some quite different direction. The person who has settled down to live in that delightful place will discover gardening instead. If we wall ourselves in with what we think we know, or with what we think we do not know, if we wall ourselves in with an analytical, rational mind, then we will not know fully what we know. And we will not know fully what we do not know. And we will not know fully what we might not know and then know. Albert Einstein, who denied the presence of personal God, acknowledged this. He said, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. Einstein cultivated opportunities to let mystery work within him. Let the mysterious work within your life. Provide yourself the rich opportunity to the wise, small voice within to speak to you, and then discern its truth for your life. You have been gifted the ability to discover wisdom through your rational mind. You have also been gifted the ability for vital and life-affirming wisdom when you quiet your thinking mind. A quiet mind gains deep-hearted insights that support the continual blossoming and growth of our spirituality. Make time to rest the voice of your rational mind. And if you struggle with this, Then think and think and think until your thinking mind is exhausted. Then lay down and let the universe whisper to you. Do not be afraid to welcome mystery. Be a practical mystic. We are sense beings. We feel, taste, smell, see, hear. This is how we experience life. Contentment can come to us in life, but we don't understand completely how contentment arises. There is a mystery to its arising, just as there is a mystery as to how all of our emotions arise. All of our emotions hold a kernel of mystery in their rising and their falling. We might know, however, what can spark contentment for us. It is that time of year when the air is chill. It will be snowing at some point. I love the way snow mutes the harsh, brassy sounds of outside. It seems the world softens and neighbors become intimates. You might experience this too. Like my senses, yours might feel heightened, acutely, pleasantly feeling the cold bite of air on your nose, gentle shivers as a slight wind flows down your spine, feeling the tingle of your fingers wrapped around a snowball, even through gloves, the slight ache from chilled toes, even through boots. Then inside for a cup of something warm, tea, coffee, hot chocolate, soup. You are content in that moment. Or maybe you prefer summer, sitting by a lake, or being in your backyard, running your fingers through water coming out of a hose. Or maybe fall is your season, watching a dog dive with abandon into a pile of fall leaves, or a small child. Such moments make little sense from an intellectual perspective. To adopt a mystic's mind, to reach out for such moments as these, to pause and savor them, to let them fully blossom within you. That is to experience all that life has to offer us. One night, 6 or 7 years ago, I was coming home late from a church event. I spent the evening with my people, Unitarian Universalists. It was a beautiful, crisp fall night, not cold enough to snow yet, and I was walking the last half mile of my commute home. It was late. No one was about. So I put my arms out, straight out, like a child pretending to be an airplane, embracing the moment. I skipped in my warm leather boots. Remember, there was no one else about. I skipped in my warm leather boots down this fairly steep hill and tripped. As I was falling, I distinctly remember, oh no, I am wearing my good wool pants. They cannot get damaged. And I landed on my hands and on my toes as if I was preparing for a push-up. I bounced up, dusted off my palms, grinned at myself, looked at my pants and was very proud because I had saved them. I loved myself in that moment. My willingness to be silly, to celebrate life that way, the mystery of being alive was alive for me in that moment. I walked the rest of the way home. Rational on one hand, responding to mystery on the other. Our faith invites mystery to come play with us, to remind us we are embodied here for a cosmic split second in the vastness of the universe. And it is a reminder to us in those moments that we are leaving artifacts of our lives behind for those who will come. You and I one day will be the artifacts of Unitarian Universalism, a faith that I want to be both celebrating our rational mind and celebrating the mystery of life fully. Let mystery remind you that your bones are made from the bones of others you do not know. Your heart beats like billions of other hearts in the same magical way. You breathe air that your ancestors have breathed, an air that is extruded from the trees in the Amazon. There is so much mystery. And while science can tell us something about the existence of everything on this planet, and we learn more and more, I don't know if we will ever solve the mystery of life itself. So I invite you to skip. I invite you to sink ever deeper into comfort with pronouns that are challenging. I invite you to continue to celebrate your rational mind, your analytical, intellectual mind. As Rumi invites, welcome and weave your knowing and not knowing, your rational and your mystical mind. Cultivate mystery in your life. Balance like a dervish between rationality and mystery. May it be so. Namaste.
Thank you all so much for your generosity. Pledges are the core of our church's spiritual practice of generosity, but we're also grateful for additional gifts to support our ministry. And we thank the folks out there who are appreciating this online ministry and supporting it by texting 73256 with the message "Give to UU," or by giving on our website at bit.ly/UU ways to give. Your gifts help us continue to provide this ministry. We also share the plate with an organization each month. In November, our Share the Plate partner is Law Forward, Inc., a nonpartisan, nonprofit impact litigation firm committing to protecting and advancing democracy. Law Forward is committed to protecting voting rights, advancing fair legislative districts, while resisting gerrymandering in Wisconsin, and more. I encourage you to give to Law Forward and support democracy in this way. To get more involved, join our Defend Democracy team here at First Church. Find out what is happening to democracy in Wisconsin and what you can do to help. Information can be found on our website or by contacting church members Kathy Rivera or Nick Hayes. You can give to our Share the Plate partner through the same webpage at bit.ly/UU ways to give. You can see the ways to donate on your screen now, and they will live on in the YouTube comments section of this video after worship is over. Thank you so much for giving, right now or when you come back later. Your support keeps us and our community partners going. Thank you.
Our closing reading is Remember by Joy Harjo. Remember the sky you were born under, know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon, who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and giving away to night. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your Father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are, red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember you are all people and all people are you. Remember you are this universe and this universe is you. Remember all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember language comes from this. Remember the dance language is, that life is. Remember.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah.